Loneliness often feels like a permanent state when you are inside it. It doesn't just sit quietly. It speaks to you, shapes your thoughts, and slowly convinces you that this is who you are now, that you are someone who has been left behind, forgotten, disconnected. But the first and most important step in rebuilding yourself from within is to separate your identity from your current emotional state. Feeling alone is an experience, not a definition. It is something passing through you, not something that defines you. When you begin to accept that loneliness is a phase, something temporary and fluid, you loosen its grip on your mind. You stop giving it the power to name you. Instead of saying, "I am alone," you begin to understand, "I am experiencing loneliness." That small shift creates space between you and the feeling, and in that space, healing can begin. Accepting loneliness as a phase does not mean denying the pain. It means acknowledging it without surrendering your entire sense of self to it. Pain has a way of making everything feel permanent, as if the present moment will stretch endlessly into the future. But if you look back at your life, you will realize that nothing has ever stayed the same forever. There were times of joy that didn't last, and that there were times of hardship that eventually softened. Loneliness is no different. It arrives for reasons, sometimes to teach, sometimes to redirect, sometimes to help you discover parts of yourself that you ignored when you were surrounded by others. When you accept it as a phase, you stop fighting its existence and start understanding its purpose. There is also a quiet strength that begins to form when you accept your loneliness instead of resisting it. Resistance often creates more suffering. When you constantly try to escape how you feel, by distracting yourself, by chasing people, by filling every moment with noise, you never actually face what is inside you. And whatever is not faced cannot be healed. Acceptance, on the other hand, is not weakness, it is courage. It's courage. It is the willingness to sit with discomfort and say, "This is where I am right now, and that's okay." That kind of honesty with yourself builds a foundation for a real transformation. When you stop seeing loneliness as your identity, you also stop making decisions from a place of desperation. You no longer feel the urgent need to attach yourself to anyone just to avoid being alone. You begin to choose connections more wisely, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. You understand that being alone is not worse than being with the wrong people. In fact, solitude can become a space of growth, clarity, and rebuilding, while the wrong company can drain you, confuse you, and delay your healing. At the same time, facing your emotions becomes essential. Many people spend years running from what they feel. They distract themselves with endless scrolling, constant social interaction, or even overworking, all to avoid sitting quietly with their own thoughts. But emotions do not disappear just because you ignore them. They stay beneath the surface, shaping your reactions, your mindset, and your behavior in ways you may not even realize. When you feel completely alone, the silence can feel overwhelming because it brings everything to the surface. Thoughts you avoided, feelings you buried, fears you never addressed, they all come forward at once. Facing your emotions means allowing them to exist without trying to immediately fix or escape them. It means sitting with the discomfort and observing it. If you feel sadness, let yourself feel it fully instead of pushing it away. If you feel anger, acknowledge it without letting it control your actions. If you feel emptiness, don't rush to fill it with distractions. Just sit with it and understand it. This process is not easy. In fact, it can feel heavier at first because you are finally paying attention to what you have been avoiding. But this is where real healing begins. When you face your emotions, you start to understand their roots. You begin to see patterns, why certain situations affect you so deeply, why certain memories still hurt, why certain fears keep repeating themselves. This awareness gives you power. Instead of being controlled by your emotions, you start to understand them. And when you understand them, you can begin to change your relationship with them. You no longer react automatically, you respond consciously. There is also a sense of self-trust that develops when you stop running from your emotions. You prove to yourself that you can handle what you feel. That even in your lowest moments, you are still capable of sitting with yourself and not breaking. This builds inner strength in a way that external validation never can. Because when your strength comes from within, it is not dependent on who stays or who leaves. It becomes a stable part of you. Facing your emotions also helps you release what you've been carrying. When you suppress feelings, they build up over time, creating a heavy emotional burden. But when you allow yourself to feel them, they start to move through you instead of staying stuck inside. This is why people often feel a sense of relief after crying or expressing their thoughts. Honestly. It is not because the situation has changed, but because the emotional weight has been released. You begin to feel lighter, clearer, more grounded. At the same time, it is important to approach your emotions with compassion, not judgment. Many people criticize themselves for how they feel. They think they are weak for being sad, or foolish for being hurt, or dramatic for feeling overwhelmed. But emotions are a natural part of being human. They are not flaws to be fixed, they are signals to be understood. When you treat yourself with kindness instead of criticism, you create a safe internal space where healing can happen. You stop being your own enemy and start becoming your own support system. As you continue this process, something begins to shift within you. The loneliness that once felt suffocating starts to feel quieter, not because it has completely disappeared, but because your relationship with it has changed. You are no longer afraid of it. You no longer see it as something that defines you. Instead, you see it as a phase you are moving through, a space where you are learning, growing, and rebuilding yourself. This is where the transformation truly begins. When you accept loneliness as a phase and face your emotions, instead of running from them, you start to reconnect with yourself on a deeper level. You begin to understand who you are beyond your relationships, beyond your circumstances, beyond your current struggles. You discover parts of yourself that were hidden under noise and distraction. You learn what you need, what you value, what truly matters to you. And in that process, you realize something powerful. You are not as alone as you thought, because you have yourself. And when you learn to be present with yourself, to understand yourself, to support yourself, that sense of inner connection starts to replace the emptiness. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't mean you will never feel lonely again, but it changes the way loneliness affects you. It becomes something you can move through, not something that controls you. Rebuilding yourself from within is not about suddenly becoming strong or fearless. It is about slowly, patiently learning to be with yourself in every state, whether you feel okay or not. It is about creating a relationship with yourself that is based on honesty, acceptance, and compassion. And it all begins with these two steps: understanding that loneliness is a phase and having the courage to face your emotions instead of running from them. Understanding your pain instead of suppressing it is one of the most transformative steps in rebuilding yourself from within. Pain, when ignored or buried, does not disappear. It simply changes form. It seeps into your thoughts, your behavior, your reactions, and even your sense of self without you realizing it. Many people believe that strength means pushing pain aside, pretending it doesn't exist, or distracting themselves until it fades. But in reality, that approach only delays healing. Suppressed pain accumulates over time, becoming heavier and more complex, until it eventually surfaces in ways that feel overwhelming and uncontrollable. When you begin to understand your pain, you shift from avoidance to awareness. Instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this feeling?" you start asking, "Why is this feeling here?" That question alone changes everything. It turns pain from an enemy into a message. Every emotional wound carries a story, something that hurt you, something that affected you deeply, something that may have been ignored or invalidated. When you take the time to explore that story, you begin to see the deeper layers behind your emotion. You start connecting the dots between your past experiences and your present reactions. Understanding your pain requires honesty with yourself. It means acknowledging things you may have tried to deny. Maybe you were hurt by someone you trusted, and instead of processing that betrayal, you convinced yourself it didn't matter. Maybe you felt abandoned, but you told yourself you were better off alone. Maybe you were constantly overlooked, and you learned to silence your own needs. These experiences don't just disappear because you choose not to think about them. They stay within you, shaping how you see yourself and how you relate to others. As you begin to understand your pain, you also begin to see patterns. You might notice that certain situations trigger strong emotional reactions that seem disproportionate to the moment. That's often because the reaction is not just about the present. It's connected to unresolved pain from the past. When you recognize these patterns, you gain insight into yourself. You realize that your reactions are not random. They are rooted in experiences that need attention and care. There is also a level of empowerment that comes with understanding your pain. When you suppress emotions, you feel controlled by them. They appear unexpectedly, and you don't fully understand why. But when you take the time to understand them, you regain a sense of control. You can anticipate your triggers, you can respond more thoughtfully, and you can begin to heal the root cause instead of just managing the symptom. This process is not about eliminating pain completely, but about transforming your relationship with it. But at the same time, understanding your pain does not mean dwelling in it endlessly. There is a difference between processing pain and becoming stuck in it. Processing involves awareness, reflection, and gradual release. It means allowing yourself to feel, but also moving forward with intention. It means learning from your experiences instead of letting them define you. When done in a healthy way, understanding your pain leads to growth, clarity, and emotional freedom. A key part of this process is self-compassion. As you uncover the deeper layers of your pain, you may come across moments where you feel regret, shame, or self-blame. You might think, I should have known better, or I shouldn't have let that happen. But healing cannot coexist with harsh self-judgment. You have to meet your past self with understanding, recognizing that you did the best you could with the awareness and strength you had at the time. This shift in perspective allows you to release the weight of self-blame and move toward forgiveness. As you continue to understand your pain, you begin to reclaim parts of yourself that were lost or hidden. You reconnect with your emotions in a healthier way. You become more aware of your needs, your boundaries, and your values. You start to build a stronger, more authentic version of yourself, one that is not shaped by avoidance, but by awareness and intention. Acknowledging where you feel broken is closely connected to this process, but it goes a step further. It requires you to look at yourself without filters, without pretending that everything is fine, without minimizing your struggles. It means identifying the areas in your life where you feel incomplete, hurt, or disconnected. This can be uncomfortable because it forces you to confront realities that you may have been avoiding. But it is also a powerful step toward rebuilding. Feeling broken does not mean you are permanently damaged. It simply means there are parts of you that need attention, care, and healing. When you acknowledge where you feel broken, you bring those parts into the light. You stop hiding them from yourself. You stop pretending they don't exist. And in doing so, you create the opportunity to repair and strengthen them. Many people avoid acknowledging their brokenness because they associate it with weakness. They fear that admitting their struggles will make them feel worse or confirm their insecurities. But in reality, the opposite is true. Ignoring your brokenness keeps you stuck, while acknowledging it allows you to move forward. It takes courage to say, this part of my life is not okay, or this is where I am struggling. That honesty is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength and self-awareness. When you acknowledge where you feel broken, you also gain clarity. You begin to see what needs to change, what needs healing, and what needs to be let go. Without this clarity, it is difficult to make meaningful progress. You might try to improve your life in general, but without addressing the specific areas that are causing pain, those efforts may feel unfocused or ineffective. Acknowledgement gives direction to your healing process. This step also helps you set boundaries with yourself and others. When you recognize where you feel broken, you become more aware of what affects you negatively. You start to understand what you can tolerate and what you cannot. This awareness allows you to protect your energy and make choices that support your well-being. Instead of repeating patterns that contribute to your pain, you begin to make decisions that promote healing and growth. There is also a deep sense of release that comes with acknowledging your brokenness. Carrying unspoken pain can feel isolating, as if you are holding something heavy that no one else can see. When you finally admit it to yourself, that weight begins to lift. You no longer have to pretend. You no longer have to maintain a false sense of being okay. You allow yourself to be real, and in that authenticity, there is a sense of freedom. At the same time, acknowledging where you feel broken should be balanced with recognizing your strength. You are not only your wounds. You are also your resilience, your growth, your ability to keep going despite everything you have faced. When you hold both truths together, that you have areas that need healing and that you also have strength within you. You create a more balanced and empowering perspective of yourself. As you move through this process, you begin to rebuild yourself piece by piece. You identify the areas that need healing, and you take steps to address them. You replace avoidance with awareness, denial with honesty, and self-judgment with compassion. This is not a quick or easy process, but it is a meaningful one. Each step you take brings you closer to a stronger, more grounded version of yourself. Understanding your pain and acknowledging where you feel broken are not about staying in a place of hurt. They are about creating a foundation for healing. They allow you to face yourself fully without fear or denial and to begin the process of rebuilding from a place of truth. And when you build from truth, the foundation is stronger, more stable, and more authentic than anything built on avoidance or illusion. Being honest with yourself about your struggles is one of the most difficult yet transformative acts you can engage in when you feel completely alone. It requires you to strip away the layers of denial, excuses, and distractions that you may have built over time to protect yourself from discomfort. Often, people convince themselves that things are not that bad, or they minimize their struggles by comparing them to others. They might say, others have it worse, or I should be stronger than this. While these thoughts may seem like a way to cope, they actually prevent you from fully understanding and addressing what you're going through. Honesty with yourself is not about exaggerating your pain, but about acknowledging it as it truly is, without distortion. When you begin to be honest with yourself, you step into a space of clarity. You start to see your life and your inner world more accurately. You recognize where you are struggling emotionally, mentally, or even spiritually. You admit when you feel lost, when you feel weak, when you feel confused. This honesty can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes the illusion of control. It forces you to confront realities you may have been avoiding. But within that discomfort lies the beginning of real change. You cannot fix what you refuse to see, and you cannot grow from a place of denial. Honesty also helps you break free from patterns that keep you stuck. When you are not truthful with yourself, you may continue repeating behaviors that contribute to your pain. For example, you might stay in situations that drain you, avoid responsibilities that would help you grow, or engage in habits that temporarily numb your feelings but harm you in the long run. When you are honest, you begin to recognize these patterns clearly. You see how your actions and choices are connected to your current state, and this awareness gives you the power to make different decisions. Another important aspect of being honest with yourself is acknowledging your role in your own life without turning it into self-blame. There is a difference between taking responsibility and being harsh on yourself. Honesty allows you to say, this is where I went wrong, or this is where I could have done better, without attaching shame to it. It's about learning, not punishing yourself. This mindset creates a healthier relationship with growth, where mistakes are seen as opportunities for improvement rather than evidence of failure. Being honest with yourself also deepens your self-awareness. You start to understand what you truly feel, what you truly want, and what truly matters to you. Without honesty, it's easy to live according to expectations, what others want from you, what society tells you to pursue, or what you think you should be doing. But when you are honest, you begin to align with your authentic self. You make choices that reflect your real values and desires, not just external pressures. This alignment brings a sense of peace and direction, even if your circumstances haven't fully changed yet. There is also a sense of relief that comes with honesty. Pretending that everything is fine or constantly hiding your struggles from yourself can be exhausting. It requires energy to maintain that facade. When you finally allow yourself to admit the truth, that burden starts to lift. You no longer have to keep up appearances internally. You can simply be where you are without pretense. This creates a foundation for genuine healing because you are working with reality, not illusion. At the same time, honesty with yourself builds trust. When you consistently acknowledge your thoughts, feelings, and experiences truthfully, you develop a stronger connection with yourself. You become someone you can rely on, someone who doesn't lie or avoid the truth. This self-trust is incredibly important when you feel alone because it gives you a sense of stability from within. Even if you don't have external support at the moment, you know that you are not abandoning yourself. Recognizing your emotional triggers is closely connected to this honesty, but it focuses more specifically on understanding what causes certain emotional reactions within you. Triggers are not just random occurrences, they are signals that something deeper is being touched. When a situation, a word, or even a memory causes a strong emotional response, it is often linked to past experiences or unresolved feelings. Recognizing these triggers is essential because it allows you to respond more consciously rather than reacting automatically. When you start paying attention to your triggers, you begin to notice patterns in your emotional responses. You might realize that certain types of criticism affect you more than others, or that you feel particularly sensitive in situations where you feel ignored or unappreciated. These patterns are not coincidences. They are clues that point to deeper emotional wounds or met needs. By identifying them, you gain insight into yourself that you might not have had before. Recognizing triggers also helps you pause before reacting. Without awareness, triggers can lead to impulsive reactions, anger, withdrawal, defensiveness, or even self-sabotage. These reactions often happen quickly, almost automatically, and can create further problems in your relationships and your life. But when you are aware of your triggers, you create a moment of space between the stimulus and your response. In that space, you have a choice. You can choose to respond in a way that aligns with your growth rather than being controlled by your emotions. Another important aspect of recognizing triggers is understanding that they are not always about the present moment. Often, they are connected to past experiences that have not been fully processed. For example, if you were frequently criticized in the past, even a small comment in the present might trigger a strong emotional reaction. Recognizing this connection helps you separate the past from the present. You begin to see that your reaction is not just about what is happening now, but about what has happened before. This awareness allows you to approach the situation with more clarity and less intensity. Recognizing your triggers also allows you to take proactive steps toward healing. Once you know what affects you deeply, you can start working on those areas intentionally. This might involve setting boundaries, changing certain environments, or developing healthier coping mechanisms. Instead of being caught off guard by your emotions, you become more prepared and equipped to handle them. At the same time, it is important to approach your triggers with curiosity rather than judgment. It's easy to feel frustrated with yourself for being too sensitive or for reacting strongly to certain things. But judging yourself only adds another layer of negativity. Instead, try to understand why the trigger exists. Ask yourself what it is trying to tell you. Is it pointing to a past hurt that needs healing? Is it highlighting a need that is not being met? When you approach your triggers with curiosity, they become tools for growth rather than sources of frustration. As you continue to recognize and understand your triggers, you begin to develop emotional resilience. You are no longer easily overwhelmed by every emotional reaction. You become more grounded, more aware, and more in control of how you respond to different situations. This doesn't mean you won't feel emotions deeply, but it means those emotions will not control you in the same way. You will be able to experience them, understand them, and move through them more effectively. There is also a sense of empowerment that comes with this awareness. When you understand your triggers, you understand yourself better. You are no longer confused by your own reactions. You no longer feel like your emotions are unpredictable or out of control. Instead, you see them as part of a larger pattern that you are gradually learning to navigate. This sense of understanding brings confidence and stability, even in difficult moments. Being honest with yourself about your struggles and recognizing your emotional triggers work together to create a deeper level of self-awareness. Honesty allows you to see your reality clearly, while recognizing triggers helps you understand how that reality affects you internally. Together, they form a powerful foundation for rebuilding yourself from within. You move from a place of confusion and avoidance to a place of clarity and understanding. And from that place, real growth becomes possible. Because you are no longer running from yourself. You are finally facing yourself with openness, courage, and intention.